Pressing the button. Oh, there she goes. I'm live.
Oh, all
Okay.
right.
Let's
Yay. Go, Beth.
see. Hi, Beth. All right. We are live. We're gonna wait for Beth is joining us. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Talk on Race, a celebration of Indigenous people. I would like to start off, as I usually do, with our land acknowledgement. The Lower Cape Fear, YWCA, serves the people located within the Lower Cape Fear region. This land once thrived with life from indigenous peoples, known today as the Cape Fear Indians and the Waccamaw Siouan Indian People, living in established settlements along the Cape Fear River and Lake Waccamaw, along with many other established sites in the region. We need to protect and honor the history of these places. Indigenous people are not relics of the past. They are still here, continuing to demonstrate their talents and gifts amidst a backdrop of ongoing colonialism and oppression. They are worth celebrating. We hope our land acknowledgement statement will inspire others to stand with us in solidarity with Native nations. So, again, thank you so much for joining us. And please, everyone, introduce yourself. We will start with Ashley.
Hi, my name's Ashley Lomboy. I am a member of the Waccamaw Siouan tribe. So excited to be here. I'm also the Global Information Security Manager for Corning. I lead their Native American Council, which is an employee resource group. I'm the founder of the Waccamaw Siouan STEM Studio, and also I'm happy to say I am on the board of directors for the Lower Cape Fear YWCA.
Yes,
I'm
you
a
are.
veteran, and so I want to say, thank you for the veterans, for all the happy Veterans Day yesterday, and I just want to say happy belated Veterans Day for my brothers and sisters in arms. I want to thank the YWCA for giving Native women this platform to speak on. And I hope we can continue these conversations going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll start with Nancy.
Hi, everyone. I am Nancy Strickland Fields. I'm Lumbee. I am the museum director for the Museum of the Southeast American Indian on the campus of the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, in Pembroke, North Carolina. We're just right up the road from you all, so not too far away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Jasmine.
Hey everyone, my name is Jasmine Jacobs. I am from the Waccamaw Siouan tribe. I currently reside in the Pembroke, North Carolina area. I am alumni from UNC Pembroke, and I loved it, so I just stayed up here ever since. I currently work with the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina as as a manager at one of their 7 Boys and Girls Clubs, and I am also their cultural enrichment coordinator assistant. Basically, what that means is I help coordinate and facilitate all of their various culture classes that the tribe provides, as well as their cultural events and initiatives. I'm really honored and a little nervous about today's event. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so but I'm really excited to bring my opinions and thoughts on certain discussions to the table. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and you're already doing a marvelous job. So no worries about the nerves. Okay, Beth, if you can hear us,
I can. How are you guys doing?
we're doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm Beth Jacobs. I'm a member of the Waccamaw Siouan tribe. I currently work at Alchemy Pharmaceuticals in materials management sample control unit. I am a powwow mom. I've been traveling with my kids for the longest time. Try to support my community. I'm on the powwow committee. anything to uplift my people, I try to participate in, or anything to help support my community members. When they try to do something, I try to support. Like Jasmine, I'm nervous about this because I tend to get talkative. I want Ashley to like text me behind the scenes if I need to shut up, because she knows I can I can get carried away.
Listen, this is a conversation, so you're supposed to talk. That's why we're here. So let's jump right into the conversation. One thing that I have started to do with every talk on race is, before we get started, I do a land acknowledgement. And thanks to Ashley, who wrote the land acknowledgement and helped send it to me, because we wanted it to be appropriate. And I just want you to kind of share with the audience what the importance of doing the land acknowledgement is.
Maybe I can jump in there first. We really felt like the land acknowledgement does a lot of different things. That, number one, it grounds you to the land that you're occupying today. It gives you reverence of the people who lived there for thousands of years prior to contact. Hopefully it's not a shock to everyone that Native Americans were here first, Indigenous people were here first. And so it helps remind you of that prior to, the past 100 years, we were here for thousands of years. And I hope that really resonates with the people who hear the land acknowledgement about the tribes and about the Cape Fear region and the importance that Native Americans brought to that, and we hope continue to bring to the Cape Fear. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it was important to write the land acknowledgement. It also helps try to move us in a direction to remove the continuous erasure of American Indians, and bring about our awareness. You'd probably be surprised, but a lot of folks here in the Cape Fear are like, I didn't know that natives were here, that they didn't know that we existed. And so one thing that the land acknowledgement does is helps remind people that we're still here. And so that's why it's important to write that.
Yeah,
so we thank you for what you're doing for that.
Thank you. I mean, I couldn't have done it without your help. So, thank you. I think, for me, one of the first land acknowledgements that I got to experience and listen to, it said, today we're going to take a moment to pause, because as we are moving, driving, going to work, picking the kids up from school, there were people who occupied this land, who toiled the soil. And it did make me pause and think, like, yeah, there were people here before me. And I think every day there needs to be an acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples, of Native Americans, because it does make us stop and really face some of the horrible trauma, the traumatic history that Indigenous people have had to face, especially in America. Did anybody else have anything to add to that statement? To Ashley's? Okay, well, we can continue. As we were talking about the land acknowledgement for the Cape Fear region, what is some of the rich history that has happened in this area that we can kind of expose the audience to?
Repeat the question. Repeat it. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I could definitely repeat the question. What is some of the history of the Cape Fear region with Indigenous people?
So I guess I can start off. So there is a book called Waccamaw Legacy. I really don't know the author's name at the moment, but there is a book about Waccamaw Legacy, and it really depicts a lot about the Waccamaw Siouan Indians, and how we kind of came about, and how where we settled at and things like that. And in the book, the author talks about, in 1524, there was a French sailor, and he sailed across the coast of the Cape Fear and came in contact with Indians. Now he did not say who the Indians were. or anything like that, but it is strongly considered to be what we would call what am I there? Can y'all hear me? I
Yes,
don't know what
we
happened.
can see.
Okay. Okay. But it is strongly suggested that the Indians that he came across were known as the Waccamaw, which is, later known as the Waccamaw Siouan. So as far as the Waccamaw Siouan people go, we do have a very rich heritage with the Cape Fear region, because, that is, we do right now reside close to the Cape Fear River and things of that nature. So as far as our history goes, we are very related to the Cape Fear region.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to it?
Yeah. Nancy, you want to add? I just put people out there.
Okay. Well, I'll just build on what she said, that there is just this really long documented history of Waccamaw Siouan people, as well as who were called Cape Fear Indians, and going back to the 1500s, where there was really intense exploration, not only by the French, but the Spanish that came through the coastal area. And really, North Carolina was being explored as a viable place, the same way that South Carolina and Virginia were, for, a variety of resources, right? This was exploration to see what are the kind of capital goods that can be gained from particularly what will become North Carolina. And the interesting thing is that explorers were able to get up into the Cape Fear, or the Cape itself, but because North Carolina is essentially landlocked by the Outer Banks, they couldn't establish a viable port. So there was always this exploration of explorers during the 15 and early 1600s trying to get in and around kind of that Wilmington area just north of present-day South Carolina, and then also, the Outer Banks stretching really from the lower part of Virginia all the way down. And that's why settlement, which was much slower in the Carolinas than it was in other parts of the country. In fact, North Carolina really wasn't colonially settled per se until the 1700s, and it remained Indian territory for a long time. And that was kind of as colonial pressures were pushing in on Virginia and South Carolina, you saw more people moving into these regions, more Native people moving into these regions for just kind of freedom and escape. But there are very early records dating back from the 1700s about Waccamaw people and Cape Fear people, which there's an idea that the Cape Fears and the Waccamaws eventually came together. The Waccamaws fought in many of the early wars. They fought in the Tuscarora War, they fought the Yamasee War, and then subsequent wars. And so where they reside today really is part of their traditional hunting grounds. So when you think about southeastern peoples, especially in the Carolinas, you had seasonal living as woodlands people. So you would have been at one time of the year on the coast, maybe when spots are running. In other times of the year, you would be a little further inland, where it was a little bit warmer, where you were foraging for nuts. There were really extensive nut gorges throughout the Southeast. So walnuts and pecans and hickory nuts and acorns were a really viable source of protein in addition to game. And of course, deer season would bring you inland. So you would live kind of in these different places. So where the Waccamaw Siouan are situated today are part of their ancestral homelands, and that big diameter that also encompasses around Horry County, Wilmington, Carolina Beach, all of that around Lake Waccamaw, where the Waccamaw Siouan are today in Columbus and Bladen counties.
Wow.
I just learned so much.
Yeah. And I just want to expand on that too, from what Jasmine said. There's really great resources out there. Pat Lurch did an amazing job with the Waccamaw Legacy as being a resource. There's also From Princess to Chief that Miss Priscilla Jacobs wrote that gives great resources, factual from a Native American lens of our community and our people and some of the struggles that we've gone through. to what Nancy said, we've survived wars, attacks, forced relocation, to the swampy areas, and that's the areas in, Columbus and Bladen County that no one wanted to live in. That wasn't what would they consider inhabitable. Where we would walk on, waterlogged boards just to get to a higher location. That's the swamps that we lived in. And so our people have really survived and been very resilient through all of that. And also maintaining our identity has been a large force and part of that. So we've cultivated the lands, we farm there. And I would just say, right now we live, like Nancy said, in the Buckhead, St. James communities. We have about 1,600 tribal members that live in and around that are members of the tribe. But yeah, I mean, even the area that we reside in today, the Buckhead community, that location, Old Lake Road, as Pat Lurch talks about, was potentially that route that we would take from the Cape Fear River to Lake Waccamaw. And so we settled in these very familiar areas once we, learned it was okay to kind of come out of the swamp areas. But even those spaces that, the Buckhead community was kind of in a swampy area. So there was a lot of advocacy and pushing from our elders to clear that area and clear that land so that it's habitable for our people. And I'm really appreciative and thankful for our elders for standing up and making a home for us in that space where, it seemed like encroachment of taking land and, there's a lot of, we were occupying a large land space and so companies coming in and just basically taking the land that we had cultivated and lived on for thousands of years because, they had a yellow deed versus a white deed and all of it. And we, so we have a deep history here, and I think it's important, even with the Board of Education and fighting to get rights for and money for our school system to start YWCA Indian School. So there's a deep history there, but I just want everyone to know where the resources are at that they can read for themselves and and get that information out.
There's one thing that you just spoke on, Ashley. If you could talk more about it, or Beth, if you want to kind of jump in, is this notion of advocacy work for your community.
There's. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Going on what Ashley was talking about how our elders fought for the land to be upgraded, the swamp areas. They're still doing that now. To this day, in the Indian Commission, they're going up. We have swamp land in front of our tribal building that they're trying to build up. Behind there, they're trying to build up. So we're still fighting for land upgrades in our in the community of Buckhead today.
So when you say you're fighting for the land upgrades, help me understand what that looks like. Does that look like, you're writing petitions? Does that look like you have to go before the council? Is it something that has to be voted on? Kind of walking me through that so that as other people are listening, we can join in the fight.
I don't know the outer workings of it with the council. I know that the Indian Commission, the members of our Indian Commission, they go to the state board and then it works from there. So I don't know the inner workings of it, but I know that they are still trying to get that land built up around there. And as far as the land that was taken, I think we did that workshop, Ashley, where we found out that one person, one of the elders in Buckhead, was able to get their land back from the paper mills and from that was taken. Out of all the members of the tribe, one was able to fight and get their land back.
Out of how many people?
There had
there was what we identified was, I think there was at least 2 court cases that there may have been potentially more. I mean, I'm not an expert in that, but we do know that there was a few court cases that went in during that time and that we could find record of for us fighting to get some of that land back. I think there was a 600 plus acres at one point where we were trying to fight for the land, and we won one of those. We won some of that land back. But to expand on some of what Beth is talking about is really about our sovereignty and our tribal government, which I'm sure a lot of folks probably don't know much about how our tribal government works, but we do have a voted in tribal board. We have that really makes the decisions for the tribe. They're voted in by the tribal members. We do that on a rotating basis. We also have the Commission of Indian Affairs at the state level. And so she's talking about, we have seats on that Commission of Indian Affairs that represents the people from the tribe, or kind of really being our advocates. On the Commission of Indian Affairs seats at the state level. And so this is where like our sovereignty comes into play, and pushing for getting some of that swampland and that water drained out is still something that we've been advocating for. And if anyone wants to help support that, I know that there was, I participated, I think, in a WIN conversation maybe a year or two ago that talked about the environmental concerns. And so, you can reach out to the tribal, call to the tribal office, and we could probably give you a link if you want to, Janiqua, of who to contact. But if there's any advocacy that can help along with that, I'm sure that we'll be willing to accept it.
Yeah, please do. Please send that link. And then we can also share it on the YWCA's page. Y'all do have a question from the audience. It's a little long, so bear with me. Do you think the history of the Waccamaw Siouan peoples being forced into uninhabitable and swamp lands is the reason why historians say that there is a lack of accounts documenting Indigenous presence between the 1700s and more contemporary history with the recognition of our 8 state tribes? I hope y'all understand that.
I think Nancy's got that one.
Come on, Nancy, help us out.
I think that historical records indicate that there were documented Native peoples throughout the Cape Fear region, and even, a little further westward into other parts of the state. There is a practice, since we are talking about race, and I do want to say that a talk about race is a talk about humanity, right? Because we seem to we're able to talk about race without necessarily humanizing the story. And so with that being said, there was a goal to essentially dehumanize Native people and put us in this miscellaneous category called free people of color. And so that actually lumped a lot of people together, not just Indians, but free people of color for different reasons, who may have been formerly enslaved, born free, purchased their freedom. And I'm talking from the 1700s up until emancipation, but still how that nomenclature stuck with us as free people of color, even well into the Civil War era. And so what that allowed to do, that was really a political move, because after the 1750s, when you've got the eastern part of the United States is very densely populated, people, especially up in Pennsylvania, are looking for new areas to come down and kind of spread their wings, not live in these really densely, like Philadelphia, urban centers, and find land for agriculture, farming, and maybe a little bit more of a bucolic landscape, either what their parents or grandparents had immigrated from, just wanting a different space, right? So North Carolina was primed. And one of the concerns, as it was for all people living during the 17 and early 1800s, was, is there an Indian problem? So the Crown put out notification that, North Carolina is now free and clear of Indians, especially after the Yamasee War, and opened up these land grants that were really affordable and opened up massive tracts of land that were Indian land, and a lot of times still had Indians living on them, to Ashley's point, talking about folks being pushed into areas that probably traditionally had not been used to actually live on. So by calling us free people of color, it was taking away the power and agency that we had as Indian people, right? And then it's saying, okay, well, we're used to a free people of color population because there are laws that control them, they're manageable populations, they live on the fringes, they don't have that same kind of agency. During that time, if you were to acknowledge an Indian group, one as a group, two by proper tribal affiliation, then you are acknowledging a political body and you're acknowledging a people with agency who might assert their sovereign rights and then stand not only as a political body, but as the Tuscarora and Yamasee War served, as someone who's going to protect those rights. And so that's where that nomenclature of free people of color came into play. So if you go back and you look at census records, you'll see lots of these families are recorded starting in 1790 as free people of color living in the area. They're not noted as Indians. And I think it's not until the 1910 census, it's either 1900 or 1910 census, where Indian people are actually acknowledged as Indians again on the census. So that's a major part of silencing voices, erasure, and we also refer to that as paper genocide because you're essentially killed in the archives.
Yes, yes. Yes to all of that. And I think that, you know, what I point to a lot of times doing talks on race is that sometimes it's not about these individual stories. It's actually about the system that empowers the elimination of race. It's the systems that empower people to say, oh, well, we don't have any records of Indigenous people living here at this point in time. You know, it's these systems that empower that. And so I think you just named that as that system, which is paper. Okay, I'm sorry. Jasmine's having some difficulties, but we're trying to get Jasmine back, okay, y'all? We're trying to get her back. You know, is that these systems create those types of levels of people being able to try to erase the culture. But what I can say is that Indigenous people around the US have been resilient, and around the world have been resilient in reclaiming land, resilient in practice, in culture, in everything that they can do to remain resilient. Can you talk a little bit about what that resilience has maybe looked like to you personally and within your family, about how you have personally tried to reclaim some of this culture that, you know, people try to erase?
Do you want me to speak to that?
I mean,
Or Ashley?
Anybody.
Okay.
Y'all both can speak on it, and Beth too.
Both. Beth too. No, I think that, you know, what that looks like today as far as Earth's reclaiming, it kind of starts with these conversations that we're having today. It starts with educating people that we are still here. It's with our companies embracing that, hey, you know, Native people are still here. They need to be represented, not just as other or as something else in our statistics. We need to call them out. I think that that's what perpetrates erasure of a group, marginalized group, Native Americans in this case. I also think, I just want to recognize that in a few weeks, we're going to have Thanksgiving. And I'm sure in some of our schools. Don't talk about
Thanksgiving yet.
No, do I got to wait for that? But,
no, yes. Well, okay. I think this is a good segue.
I won't go there.
Because I think it is important, right, to acknowledge like what Thanksgiving was about, and not to this whole cultural appropriation, to say like, you know, to have little kids dress up with feathers all over and like, you know, do some of these things that are actually offensive and that are incorrect to history. But I wanted to actually talk about how to advocate in our school systems to teach the correct history, and like what ways can we assist our children as parents who are watching into teaching them the actual story of the interaction with Native Americans and the colonizers.
You know what's really sad, but what I'm really proud of is that our elders or our ancestors were coming up and they were fighting like to keep their recognition, but they were also, as time was progressing, they were conditioned to think that it was okay for people to run around with feathers in their hair, or it was okay for this. And they're looking at TV and they're seeing how they're portraying Native Americans on TV, and and they got conditioned to the point where they thought, okay, well, this is just the way it's going to be, and that's okay. And I'm really proud of this generation and the one before us, where we're saying, no, that's not okay. And we're trying to change the mindsets of people. And it's hard because you've been conditioned to think this way all your life. And it's hard to get that point across that, okay, no, we may not have said anything about it in the past, but we didn't know any better. We weren't conditioned, they were conditioned to think that way. But now we're saying, no, you can't do that. And it's wrong. And I'm just really proud of this generation and people younger than me that are stepping up and bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to expand on what Bev's talking about there, and it's really around, the erasure of Native people. It's unfortunately, it starts in the school system where we have whitewashed education around Native Americans and what we are, who we are. It also talks about us in the past tense, when you go into a museum and it's, oh, they used to, not they are. I think that we see, we see that in a lot of, in so many different areas where, there's costumes and people have this romanticized version of what Native Americans are, who we look like, and it leads to, it has led to the erasure of our people because they're looking for someone with long, straight black hair, with dark eyes, that have high cheekbones. And I think that, we need to start speaking up. We need to start having these platforms, these conversations. I think that companies need to take it seriously and not perpetuate the erasure of Native people. And especially here in the Cape Fear, we have such a rich history, as we've already talked about Native Americans in this area. It really pains me when I go into even our ancestral home at Lake Waccamaw, and you don't see, it's not like there's something or a signal there that says this is our home. This is, where our creation story, where there was the meteor fell into and created Lake Waccamaw. Our creation story, our people of the falling star is there, and I think that by not acknowledging us is by saying that we're no longer here, and I think that. We just need to do better as in the Cape Fear region at doing that.
Yeah. And Nancy just shared a resource for me, so I will make sure that we share the resource on our Facebook page. Nancy, can you just tell us a little bit about what that resource is?
Yeah, so I just moved back to North Carolina. It's been about 5 years ago now. It feels much more recent than that, but I say just 5 years ago. But I worked with a museum in Oklahoma City, and we worked with the 37 tribes that are located there. And the Oklahoma City Public Schools Indian education is phenomenal. And so the link that I just shared is a teaching resource guide about Thanksgiving and appropriate practices like the ones that have been mentioned so far, but appropriate and inappropriate, but also it's telling the accurate story of the Wampanoag and the Pilgrims for the Thanksgiving story. And it emphasizes the importance of Native Thanksgiving celebrations. So we're not saying that there aren't Thanksgiving celebrations. This, in fact, for the Wampanoag was a traditional celebration that they were participating in, but there are many different Thanksgiving celebrations that tribes celebrate throughout the year. There's green corn ceremony in and around the southeast, northeast, and the Midwest parts of the country. There are feast days among Pueblo cultures. There are other kinds of Thanksgiving days. There's potlatch out in the Northwest coast. So Thanksgiving is a very important time. It's usually more than one day, and it is a Native practice. So we need to kind of re-indigenize our traditional holiday and not just kind of surrender it to the conversation about improper practices. So the importance of educating people, like what we've talked about, and kind of giving them a toolkit of saying, okay, this is inappropriate, but this is appropriate, and this is a really unique opportunity to learn more about Native people and being inclusive of the celebration. And, it did serve as inspiration when Abraham Lincoln was promoting it as a holiday to bring people together. And I think that it can continue to serve as an inspiration for people, especially during these times, to celebrate family and all that we have to be thankful for. It shows a debt of gratitude to the Creator and our survivance as a people and all that we have to celebrate culturally. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of Thanksgiving, but it is time to re-indigenize it and repackage it in a way from a Native perspective that can still be, viable in classrooms. And it's one of the great things that we have to offer that is a legacy.
Yeah, and I think what I hear you saying is Thanksgiving is still important. It's still something to be celebrated, but it's not something to be culturally appropriated. And the only way not to culturally appropriate it is to educate ourselves and to learn more about how do we celebrate this in a way that it honors all people. And I think sometimes Americans, we struggle with how to honor all people that look all different kind of ways, that all different races, cultures. And I think we have to embrace diversity. We have to embrace that there are different ways of appreciating culture. And we just have to pick up a book and learn how to do it right. You do have a question from the audience. How best can we, I'm guessing, advocate and support Indigenous people that live in the Lower Cape Fear? It looks like Jasmine wants to answer that. Go ahead, Jasmine. Welcome back.
Hi. I did not know what happened. But I would say, that there's a lot of Indigenous people that, in my opinion, Indigenous people, we were born artists, whether it is quilting, beading, making regalias, graphic design, painting, whatever it is, we are all artists of some type of nature. And there are a lot of Indigenous people that have they do beadwork, they do painting, whether it is graphic design, whether it is traditional paintings like florals, because we're woodland people, whatever it is, they have a lot of things that they sell and that they put out for people to buy. And I think that advertising, like sharing, because of social media, it's easy to support other people no matter what, no matter where you're at, and sharing their things, buying their things, especially now that the pandemic's going on, and we're not going to, a lot of us aren't going to be able to get out and shop for Christmas. So buying Indigenous things by Indigenous people, that is the key
I was
point.
about to say,
Yeah,
I think you have to say that. And how do we recognize it? And maybe what can also happen is we have to learn how to do some research, because just because it looks like it's from Indigenous people does not mean it was made by Indigenous people.
You are correct, because I know for a fact that there was one store, I won't call out the store, but there was a store that I went to, and I looked and I saw beaded earrings. Like they were nice in my opinion. I said, you know what, I would wear those, but it really didn't sit well with me, because I was like, why would I buy these from here when I know 4 or 5 different people that actually sit down and hand make this, and this was made in a factory, So yeah, really knowing, that this was not made in China or made, at a factory, and actually buying Indigenous things by Indigenous people. Yeah. That's the hard thing is trying to figure out, if it is by Indigenous people.
Yeah, and one of the articles that I did read was about how COVID-19 has affected Native communities. And one way has been with the shutdown, some of this exchange of buying and selling has ended. And so I think it's important in the holiday season for us to do that. And for those who are listening, the YWCA will try to figure out how to connect people who are listening to Indigenous vendors so that you can purchase items, because I think it's important to do that. And then speaking of COVID-19, and can you describe what does
can I expand
go
on
ahead,
that a
Ashley.
little bit more too? Because I think Jasmine's point of supporting Native artists is very important. But I also think it's important to reach out to your local tribal communities and find out what they're doing and what you can do to help support. Just putting a plug in for the STEM Studio program, we do through some of the announcements and things that the YWCA has done, we've been able to get in, a few in-kind resources donated. I think that, the tribe's herbal gardens and healing gardens that they're doing is really important. We've also had partnerships more recently with the Cape Fear Museum, so give a shout out to them. But I think that, I've given the website here. I think, Janiqua, you're going to share that later.
Mm-hmm.
But go there and see if there's anything that you could do to support. Awesome. Go there and see if there's anything that you can do. Kind of gives you a breakdown of what the tribe's working on. From the daycare, it's been around since 1970. So it's close to 50 years old. See what you could do to help support them and help support the tribe raise its next generation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate that, because there are lots of local businesses here that do need this, because we've all been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in this time. And speaking about the pandemic, I wanted to kind of talk about, what does this discrimination against Indigenous people look like? I know we talked about the notion of erasing the culture and document erasing. Am I saying that right, Nancy? Help me out, please.
Paper genocide.
Paper genocide, thank you. And thinking about paper genocide, other ways does discrimination look like? And I would say, when I was looking at some things about police brutality, incarceration of women and men, it mirrored a lot of what we see in the African American community. And so I would love for you to share light on what some of these discrimination, systematic oppression looks like for Indigenous communities.
I'll say too, I don't know if this pertains to like COVID, but as far as the like the Board of Education or the school boards in our area, we need advocates for that, because the majority of our children go to school in Columbus counties or Blaine counties. They are not spending money for our kids in those schools. The majority of the schools that get money are predominantly Caucasian schools or white schools. Like the majority of them are in those areas. They're not down in like our communities. They're not spending the money. They're not thinking about our kids. And I think that our board and the people in our community are advocating for them, but they're not being heard. I think we need a bigger platform, just like the YWCA could help with that platform and helping our kids. Ashley's doing the STEM program, and it's, thank goodness for social media, she's reaching out like to other places, and they're seeing this program going on, and it's helping our kids. But as far as like the government level, they are not helping our kids in the school systems or school boards or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's something we definitely,
maybe you guys see it, but I don't see it.
Yeah. Jasmine, do you have anything to say to that one?
As far as discrimination goes, like Beth said, the school system, being somebody that was in the school system not too long ago, I would say that I have seen that it has actually gotten worse than what it was when I was in school. I have two little sisters that are currently in school. One is actually at the high school now. She's not supposed to be, but they combined some schools, so she's at the high school. That does not sound right to me. Wow. And then I have one that is also in the 11th grade, and seeing what they go through and seeing that the way it was when I was there versus the way it is now, it's completely different. Even as far as discrimination goes, when I was at UNCP, UNCP is a institution that was founded by Native Americans for Native Americans. And even then, when I went to school there, I'll never forget, I had to do, it was Native American Heritage Month, so I was doing a lot of shows because I'm a powwow dancer. And so I was doing a lot of shows, and there was one where I had to, as soon as my class ended, I had to go straight to the show, already dressed, in full outfit and everything. And so, I went to class, and actually the class was an American Indian Studies class. So I was like, well, I'm not, it's not going to be that bad for me to wear my regalia to the class because it's American Indian Studies class. So when I walked in, of course the Native Americans was like, oh, she's got a show to do. But then the other students was like, what do you have on? Why would you wear that? Kind of like they was asking questions, but in the way that they were asking it was not appropriate. And so, me, because I'm used to that, I was like, well, I'm a Native American. And they're like, you're a Native American? What do you mean? Like, and I'm like, you're in a class about American Indian Studies, and you're asking me what is a Native American? Like, this does not make sense. So, discrimination, it for Indigenous people, in my opinion, it is from, in the school systems, it's from, lack of knowledge with the general public. And I do feel like North Carolina, as far as the Commission of Indian Affairs is concerned, as far as NCNAO, which is North Carolina Native American Youth Organization, as well as certain things like United Tribes, all of these organizations, they do a really good job at creating a community for Indigenous people. And when you get around people, when you go to these conferences like the NCNAO conference or the United Tribes conference and things like that, you really feel empowered to do, to kind of like spread awareness more than what you would normally do. And so I think that the only way that we can stop the discrimination is to become empowered and create more movers and shakers in our Native American communities. That way we can create a seat at the table for Indigenous people.
Yeah, beautifully stated. Beautifully stated. Go ahead, Ashley. You look like you had something to add.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I just had
No, you're fine.
I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'm like writing down.
No, you're good. You're good.
No, I just, to echo and just back up what Beth and Jasmine's talking about is the discrimination that people are kind of looking for today is not the same as what it was years ago. However, we are still fighting in some of the same we're still fighting some of the same battles. What Beth said, I'm just reading a quote here from one of Pat Lurch's books. In 1892, we asked Columbus County Board of Education for a small allotment for money for Indians, for the Waccamaw Siouan people. And you just heard Beth talk about we need more funds. And so this is from 1892 to today. So we still have a lot of work to do. But we're making some advancements. I just want to give a shout out to Pam Jacobs, who ran the first Native American to run on Columbus County Board of Education this past year. And how great that was, to see and to help empower kind of the next generation to move forward. And we need to, as Native people, we need to get behind that and support it. But we have a lot more work to do, but it comes in forms of education. It also comes in our educational system. Some of those same schools that majority are, they have a high population of Native Americans, their kids are going to come home with feathers in a few weeks, the fake ones. And I mean, we have cultural appropriation happening right now, like in our own local schools where our students are going to school at. And I think that is just uncalled for. You have this community that's there to support and help give that education. And I just want to talk a little bit about the resources. I think that we need to do a better job at educating ourselves. It starts in the school system. If you're a school or a teacher, I know that I want to give props to Columbus County also, though, for attending our Indian Education Day every year before our powwow, where students in the middle school can get that hands-on. But that's one snapshot. That's one snapshot. That's one time in that kid's 12 years of education, but between elementary to high school, that they get to experience Native culture hands-on. But we need a lot more of that. I think that we're just scratching the surface. And again, I appreciate the YWCA for giving us this platform to speak on these things and hopefully bring about the awareness that needs to happen in our area.
One more thing I
Absolutely.
want to say is, you know, as far as stereotypes go, you know, a lot of people, when you think of a Native American, you think of what you see in Pocahontas, or you think of like the tan skin and the long dark hair, you know. But, you know, Native American people, just like any other race, you know, we come in all shapes, sizes, hair types. I mean, you see,
Mhm.
you know, rocking the curls today because, you know, that's who we are, you know. Because literally when I was getting ready for this, I literally thought, okay, well, I'm about to do this form. I need to straighten my hair. That is the first thing that I thought was, I need to straighten my hair because this is about Native American Heritage Month. And then, you know, I battled with that for a long time, for maybe a week and a half, because I said, you know, why do I feel like in order for me to be professional or for me to really
Yeah.
look native, I should straighten my hair? But it's because there's stereotypes about Native American people, and because they are so strong, it is a battle that we as Native American people face, because in order for me to feel like I'm Native American, I need to straighten my hair to look it. But that's not true, you know, because we all
Right.
come in different shapes, sizes, colors, shades, hair types, all the things.
And the sad
Absolutely.
thing is about it that stems in like interracial in our own communities.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I can
Yeah.
remember when I cut my hair and it was curly. Oh, people had a fit. What's wrong with her hair? It's curly, blah, blah, blah. You need to straighten your hair. These are people in our community, like older people that were conditioned to think that way, that if your hair wasn't straight and you couldn't be Indian or you couldn't say you were Native. It's all in the conditioning. I'm so glad we are breaking away from that. I get so excited when I see like Jazz. That's why I wanted to keep my camera off because I start crying. But I get so excited when I see girls like Jasmine's age where they don't fall into that stereotype and they can go off and be proud of yourself and still stand up and say, no, we can be this and we can be that.
Beth,
That's like it's
you
hard.
got me blinking
Yeah.
up. I'm blinking
But
up, Beth. I'm blinking up.
that's
Blink up.
colonialism, right? But I mean, that's colonialism working is what it
Yeah.
is, you know. And
Yeah.
we joke around about having a colonized mind, but that's really what that is, and it's the product of what happens when that is successful. And we need to break away from that. And it's the generational trauma that happens that if you don't straighten your hair, then you're not going to fit the mold that America thinks that you need to fit into. But yeah, we need to continue breaking away from that and support who we are and just be happy with the skin that we're in, and keep pushing for more of these platforms in other areas. I think that, like I keep just saying, you know, how proud I am to be a part of the YWCA board, and to be a part of, you know, the racial justice and advocacy group, because without them, we wouldn't have this platform, you know, even today to talk about, you know, who else is doing this. And we need more of that. We need more in the school systems to really take a hard look at what you're doing in your school system and what's happening in these generations to help get this, you know, to help embrace Native culture. So I appreciate Beth. Y'all gonna make me cry too, Alberta. I'm about to.
You
I
have to
didn't keep
actually,
my
I'm blinking.
camera off.
I'm blinking up. I'm blinking up. Because I think, Jasmine, to hear you, I feel the same sentiments, right? If I'm going into a job interview, I need to straighten my hair so that I'm accepted, because also my name is Janiqua, right? I have an ethnic name. And so I think, you know, I too have to unwork some of that colonialism to say, like, regardless of how I show up, when I get, I am the best of who I am, and I am all of who I am. And I want you, you know, whether you accept me or not, I am who I am. My name is still going to be Janiqua.
Right.
Blow it dry. And when I wet it, it's still going to curl right back up. You know, like none of those things are going to change. But I do think embracing that, like, not only just helps you, it helps your sisters, it helps, you know, other kids in the community who look up to you. And it helps the elders, even who are older than you, say, oh my God, look what she's doing. Like, you know, it's not about what her hair is, it's about who she is inside, it's about her character, and it's about all she's doing. So Thank you for that. And this has been an amazing conversation. We have about a couple of more minutes left, and I really want to give you a chance to say some closing remarks. But before you do, I want to say thank you to the YWCA for allowing us to continue to do Talk on Race. Thank you so much to Villa Jenkins, who is our CEO, and our amazing Racial Justice and Advocacy Committee, who do amazing work. And then we're going to start with Beth for closing remarks. Then we'll go to Jasmine, then we'll go to Nancy, and then we're going to end with Ashley. Everybody has 1 minute.
Oh my goodness. Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed this. I try to keep my emotions in check, but I get excited sometimes. I just really appreciate you guys putting this platform out so that more people around can know us and can get to know us and know that we're still here. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Bev said. First, I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I also want to say, that I am thankful for this platform because, I can remember there was a time when this was unheard of. This was, just a dream. And I'm really thankful that y'all are wanting to bring awareness and that y'all are wanting more knowledge because, we want people to know, who we are and that we're still here. And, that not only was our ancestors here, but we're also here and we're not uneducated. We are educated. We are movers and shakers in our communities, and not just in our communities, but in the world. And so I'm just thankful that y'all have allowed us this opportunity, and I'm thankful that I was allowed to speak.
So much, Jasmine. Okay, Miss Nancy.
So again, ditto to what everyone has said, and it's been an honor to join my co-presenters today. And this is where I do my shameless plug for the museum.
Please.
So if you want to learn more about the tribes in North Carolina, more about what Native people are doing, the history and culture, please visit the Museum of the Southeast American Indian at uncp/museum. We have some great programs that are happening right now. We have a kind of a wellness series, an uplifting series called Chicken and Pastry for the Soul, which is a play on the book series Chicken Soup for the Soul back in the 80s and 90s. But tomorrow we're going to post a video about elders in the garden and the benefits of kind of just sharing time together and getting fresh air and sunshine. The videos will run through December the 19th. We also have our new an existing exhibition that was here, but that is opening at the Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, that's talking about Southern Society for Reconstruction moving forward. This is one of their first times that they have interpreted Native peoples as that part of that viable population. So Lumbee Indians, a People in a Place, will be opening today, in fact, and we have a panel discussion next Thursday at 7 p.m. You can visit our Facebook page or our website to get more details. But thank you all again, and I look forward to hopefully continuing this conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And last but not least, Ashley.
Thank you. Thank you, Janiqua, and for my co-panelists for agreeing to be on this panel today. Like Jasmine said, it's kind of been a dream to have this type of conversation, particularly about here in the Cape Fear region. We're talking, Natives are talking, we are still here. We just need you to listen. And we need you to be involved. We need you to take a hard look at what you're doing, and I just employ the school systems. If you're a teacher, you can make the difference and make a change for the next generation. Use the resources that Nancy put out. I think, shared some books, particularly around Thanksgiving, that it's from a Native lens. There's some really great resources, a lot of great tools out there to help you get a kind of a new vision, I'll say, of the history of the Cape Fear from a Native point of view, from a Native lens. But I just, like I said, I can't say it loud enough. We're still here. We keep talking, but we need you to listen and really be our ally. And that's what we're looking for here today. We can't always be at all the tables, but you can speak up whenever you see us not being represented. You can speak up whenever you see us not coming through in the statistics. You can speak up whenever, even on the news, WECT, WWAY, some of these other news outlets. It's Native American Heritage Month, and you walk around this month and I haven't seen much. And I think that we need to, as a community, as a Cape Fear community, we need to do better with that. And we have a long way to go. We understand that it's not going to happen overnight, but here's a start. And I know you guys will be sharing some great resources later on. So, but yeah, thank you for joining in today.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your thoughts, your wisdoms, and your desires. Our audience, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this important, heartfelt conversation that's been filled with so much knowledge. And we look forward to everyone joining us again in December for our conversation with youth about life as a teen currently during virtual school and COVID-19. So again, thank you so much to Ashley, Nancy, Beth, and Jasmine, and everybody have a great weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.